asshole for not wanting my mother to smoke in my car? I, 22 female, do not smoke at all, and I don't allow anyone to smoke in my car, period. I went to have a shopping day with my mother and told her in advance she was not allowed to smoke in my car. So I went to her house and was reminding her no smoking in my car, or we could take her car, or I could stop to let her smoke outside. Her friend that she lives with flipped out, saying that I should let my mom smoke in my car because she's my mother, and saying that I hold my mother at the same level as my friends. I said no, I just don't want smoke in my car, and she went on and on and on. We finally left and picked up my sister and took her to my mom's house after we were done shopping and I had to leave. The next day my sister calls me and says how my mother's friend did nothing but talk bad about me all night, saying that I'm stuck up and think that I'm better than everyone else. So, am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for not giving one of my son's toys to my nephew, causing him to have an hours-long tantrum? We hosted Thanksgiving at my place. My brother, his wife, and their almost 4-year-old son were among the guests. As people were leaving, my brother asked if my nephew could take home one of my 2-year-old son's toy trucks. My nephew had been playing with it non-stop since they arrived and wanted to keep it. My brother said that he'd replace the toy if I told him where I got it. I told my brother that I'd be happy to give him a link to the store where I bought it, but I would not give him the toy then and there. I refused for 2 reasons. Firstly, my brother, sister-in-law have a terrible habit of giving my nephew everything he asks for. He is way too old for that. Secondly, I don't want to reinforce in my nephew that it's okay to just take things he wants. My brother said that my nephew would throw a tantrum if he didn't get the toy then and there, and that everything would be easier if I just let him take the toy and get sent a replacement in the mail. I told my brother that I would not be an enabler for my nephew's bad behavior, and that it's my brother, sister-in-law's problem if he throws a tantrum. Of course, the inevitable happened. My nephew started shrieking inconsolably at the top of his lungs, and my brother, sister-in-law, and nephew had to leave. Later that evening, I got an angry text from my brother saying that my nephew screamed his head off for the entire 3-hour car ride home and only stopped screaming after he literally passed out from exhaustion. He said that the tantrum was my fault since it would have been completely avoided if I had just given my nephew the toy, and accused me of quote-unquote backseat parenting, since in his words, it's not my place to set an example for his son. My wife thinks we should have just handed the toy over to make things easier, especially since our son has a ton of toys, and it's not particularly attached to that specific truck, and would not have noticed it missing for just a couple days. I still maintain that it's well within my rights to set an example for my nephew, even if it goes against my brother, sister-in-law's parenting.
Last week, I signed my little brother up for swim lessons for the summer because he's going into the 1st grade, and because of COVID, he's still never been in an actual classroom or made any actual friends. Watching this kid interact with other kids for the first time has been interesting because he doesn't know how to talk to them. He hangs out with me all day and I'm 20. For example, anytime he has to pee, he will yell, I have to pee, climb out of the pool and run to the bathroom. And he did that like last Friday, and the kid was like, just pee in the pool. Pobrecito, because my brother was like, ew, you pee in the pool? Where I swim? And then the other kids looked and the kid was like, no, I don't pee in the pool. And my brother was like, you're lying. And I'm like, get this. And the kid was like, no. And my brother was like, yes, you do. And you try to make me do it with you. I took him to the bathroom and I was like, don't ever do that again. If he wants to pee in the pool, that is his choice. We do not judge.
In high school, I had a friend who lived in this old, small apartment building. And on the 1st floor was this old guy named Dave who had apparently lived in the building forever. And no one really knew what Dave's deal was. The only time people saw him is when he walked outside to walk his tiny dog. But other than that, he never left his apartment. He had a nephew who delivered him groceries once a week. My friend just assumed that Dave was too old or had some sort of sickness that prevented him from leaving the house. One day my friend was coming home from school and Dave's nephew was leaving the apartment building. And my friend is really sweet, so she was like, hey, I know Dave sometimes has troubles getting out of the house, so if you ever need me to go over there and bring him something, let me know. I'm always happy to help. And the nephew looked really shocked and terrified. He was like, no, You should never go over to Dave's ever. And then he got really awkward and he was like, okay, gotta go, bye. And then a few weeks later, my friend was coming home from a Halloween party late at night. And when she got inside her apartment building, Dave's door on the first floor was wide open. And it was pitch black inside his apartment. But then she heard something behind her. So my friend hears something behind her, but it's pitch black. She's like, hello? And then she finds the switch to the hallway lights, turns them on, and Dave is standing right there with his small dog. She's like, hey Dave, you kind of scared me. And Dave was like, oh, sorry, I was looking for the light switch myself. But that didn't make any sense because he wasn't standing anywhere close to the switch and he'd been living in that apartment building for 30 years. So she starts walking up the stairs and then Dave says, I've been working on a project that I'm really excited to show you. And my friend's like, oh, like an art project? And Dave's like, yeah, kinda. And she's like, okay, well maybe my mom and I can come by another time to see it. And then they say goodnight, but she just feels pretty weird about the whole interaction. A few months later, she's at school and she gets a text from her mom that she has to work late and won't be home to make dinner. That afternoon, my friend walks home, walks up the stairs to her apartment building, goes to unlock the door, but then realizes the door's already unlocked. Sometimes her mom would forget to lock the door, so it wasn't totally out of the ordinary, but it was winter and it was already getting dark outside even though it was only 4 p.m., so she turns on all the lights to her apartment. But then, all of a sudden, all the lights switch off. She tries to switch all the lights back on, but they're not working anymore, and all of a sudden she's finding it really hard to breathe. She's afraid she might faint, so she kneels down onto the floor. Then suddenly she feels sharp nails running down her back, and she tries to move, but she feels so weak that she can't. She turns around to see who it is, but before she can, she blacks out. The next thing she remembers is waking up in a hospital bed, and her mom is sitting next to her looking really worried. Her mom's like, everything's okay, there was a carbon monoxide leak in the apartment, and you passed out. The nurse is like, in the next few weeks you may feel tired or sluggish or have hallucinations, don't worry, that's totally normal. And my friend is like, what about the back scratches? Her mom's like, what are you talking about? So she runs to the bathroom, pulls up her hospital gown, and there are 4 dark scratches on her back. When she comes back from the bathroom, her mom looks concerned, and she goes, honey, there's also something else you should know. Dave, who lived on the first floor, passed away, and they've been cleaning out his apartment, and they found something. And it might freak you out, but I feel like you should know about it. Her mom tells her that they found a weird box of things in his closet, and inside that box were random pictures of her, an old hairbrush, pieces of hair, a pair of shoes that she thought she had lost. And the nurses think that the scratches are from when she fainted, but she's sure she felt someone scratching her back, and she's sure that it was the ghost of Dave.
My ex-fiance cheated on me with my cousin, and now my family wants me to forgive him because he's sick with cancer. I'm 27 and don't have any siblings, but I have a cousin named Kevin. He's 2 years younger than me, and we literally grew up together. I spent a lot of time with my dad's side of the family as my mom is deceased and my dad never remarried because of his health issues. I was there with Kevin most of the time and we did everything together. I've always been very close with my grandparents as well, so I was very comfortable being there. When I was engaged to my ex-fiance, I used to bring her over to my grandparents' house most of the time. Her, me, and Kevin would spend our time doing things together. I noticed Kevin would try to take part in personal conversations and try to tag along whenever we went out for dinner. I set some boundaries, but he just kept stomping over them. He tried to pick fights with me and claim I'm forgetting about him and prioritizing my ex over him, and I didn't know how to deal with this, so I kept my distance. In about 2 months, I found out from my aunt about Kevin constantly meeting up with my ex, and she told me that she was worried something was going on between Kevin and my ex-fiance, and she was right. Turns out, my ex and Kevin got together while I was being kept in the dark while I was planning our wedding and handing out invitations. I felt like an absolute idiot. I couldn't handle my anger, and I stopped everything and cut contact with Kevin and the family, except my dad because he needed me. I heard that Kevin was in and out of the hospital, but I didn't know why. That was until my aunt reached out to me telling me that Kevin has liver cancer and wasn't handling it well. I drove my dad to visit him once and saw my ex, who's now his girlfriend, there, and I left right away. I kept my distance, and recently, I started getting calls from the family members asking, did you hear about Kevin? And telling me the same story. My grandmother called me wanting to arrange for a family dinner on Christmas, and because Kevin got out of the hospital. They wanted me to come home hoping that I solved my issues with him, seeing that I may not be able to do it later. However, I refused. She told me that I needed to have some empathy and let go of the past because what happened to him was enough for me to let it go. They started pressuring me from all sides. I told my grandparents that I won't sit with my ex-fiance and the person who wronged me at the same table and pretend to be a happy family. They replied that I was resentful, that he's my cousin no matter what happens. It's the same people who allowed my ex into their house after what she did and sided with Kevin and said that they only allowed my ex into the house for Kevin's sake. Now they demand that I get right with him because he clearly deserves more sympathy than I do. I'm deeply hurt and I can't imagine sitting at the same table with the people who hurt me the most. What should I do at this point? I think everyone is being unfair and refusing or just ignoring what Kevin did to me.
Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her wedding will never be that important to me? My sister is getting married and I am a bridesmaid. The dresses she picked for the bridesmaids were a shade of light orange and pink tones. I'm not a fan of pink at all, but it's a dress. I can handle it. As usual in every wedding, if you're a bridesmaid, you are expected to pay for the dress. The dress costs $150. That already for me is a huge sacrifice, paying $150 for a dress I'll never wear again. I have some visible hand and arm tattoos. I have a back tattoo, which will be visible because the dress is backless, and my hair is brown with some pink highlights. My sister demands that I dye my hair brown and get rid of the pink highlights. She also demands I cover my tattoos with body makeup because she wouldn't like me having pink hair and tattoos in the wedding pictures, and that the bridesmaids are supposed to look classy, and if I have pink hair and tattoos visible, people will focus more on my crazy style than the bride and groom. I told her I'm not doing any of that. The conversation went like this. The bride? What do you mean you're not? You bought a dress you hated and you have an objection on temporarily hiding your tattoos and dyeing your hair. It's not like you can't dye your highlights back after the wedding is over. Try to understand where I'm coming from. Me. You knew I had dyed my hair and tattoos when you asked me to be a bridesmaid. This is how I love myself, and it's insulting how you expect me to change myself like this so you can have your picture-perfect wedding. I bought the dress because it's a dress. You expect me to be someone else for the day. This is how I am and how I've been for years. Why are you suddenly surprised? The bride. I didn't think my own sister would throw a tantrum over fucking tattoos and fucking hair. It's my wedding, so yes, I want it to be perfect. And either you can go with it or you're out of the bridal party. Me. I'm out then. Your wedding is not that important to me to lead me to a point of changing myself. Either you accept me like this or you don't. Don't expect me to change because you're scared of not having a classy wedding because of me. Blessings. Since then, my parents and brother have called me and cursed me out for not honoring my sister's wishes. Am I the asshole? My husband beat cancer and now he's giving up on our marriage. It's been 6 months since my 21 female husband, 21 male, had a stem cell transplant. This was in conjunction with chemotherapy to help him improve his quality of life if the chemo worked as a treatment. He had metastatic brain cancer in his bones, and his chances weren't good. He still has to worry about the cancer coming back in the future, but the treatment did work, and now he's back to normal life. Except nothing has been normal. He's been depressed ever since he got home from the transplant. I've tried to talk to him about it, showing my support. I talked to his family, basically just telling them he feels burnt out and asking them if they can reach out more. I've tried to handle a lot of my own struggles on my own. I have clinical depression, and now I'm recovering from pushing that aside to be his caregiver for 2 years. I'm in counseling, and I'm still work full-time. This past week, he told me he's thinking about it for a few weeks, and he doesn't think he can do it anymore. This being our marriage. He says I always take my anger out on him, and the past year has been all about me. I took a few deep breaths, and then told him that's hard to believe since in the past year, all I've done is work and use all my vacation days on being there for his treatments. This summer, we used all our extra money on getting him his dream motorcycle and all the accessories to go with it. We had a plan on getting me one too, but it ended up being too expensive, so we agreed on him doing the motorcycle course and getting a bike himself. I've been focused on my therapy and healing. I've been going to work every day. I also got basically ghosted by my best friend after she got married this summer. I've had repressed memories and childhood traumas come up in the last month that I've been working through basically on my own. My husband knows, but we've had a total of 2 conversations about it, and when I try to bring it up, he makes the conversation about something unrelated. I said I wanted to go to marriage counseling since he's refusing to see his own therapist or counselor for the last 3 years. He finally got himself a counselor instead, and I feel like it's too late for that. After he told me this week that he thought our relationship was over, I snapped. I told him that if he was going to give up, that I wasn't going to shut up about the pain that I'm dealing with anymore. I am always forced to be quiet to listen to him talk about what he's going through, and I've done it happily for our entire marriage. And to hear him say those things felt like an ultimate betrayal. Now he wants to take it back. He says he should have never said that, and he wants me to give him time to work with his counselor and heal. But I still think the problem isn't addressed. He thinks the last year had been about me, when our entire marriage has been about him. And he never acknowledged that. He refuses to talk about his treatment and the things that we were together for, but he makes jokes about his own funeral even though it makes me cry. Does anyone have any advice? I think he's given up, and to know that he's verbalized it, part of me would just...
Storytime about how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So just some background information. My husband and I got engaged 2 years ago, and this whole situation happened a month after we got married. So fast forward, it's a Sunday morning. Well, usually every week on Sunday, I clean the whole house. So I woke up, went into the bathroom to take my ring off, and I could not get it off. Mind you, I had gained a little bit of weight since my husband and I got engaged. Anyways, I tried butter, I tried soap, I tried everything, even oil. So after trying to get it off for an hour straight, my finger was 3 times bigger than it usually is. So at this point, I'm really scared that I'm going to have to get it cut off. Because 1, I didn't want to ruin it, and 2, it was really expensive. So I call my husband and he's like, "Oh, call your dad. Firefighters always know what to do." So I called my dad and thank God he lived 5 minutes away because he drove over really quickly. Like for part 2. Part 2 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, my dad lived 5 minutes away, so he just rushed over to my house. And we tried a few more things to get it off. We tried Windex, we tried the dental floss, none of it was working. So my dad told me that we were gonna have to cut it off with pliers. So he comes over with the pliers, cuts the ring off. Well, a few days later, I had taken it to the same place that we got it to get the band fixed. Or replaced. While I was there, I decided to get it appraised, just for insurance reasons. So a few days later, I go and pick up my ring, and when I get home, I look at the appraisal. It was not the same one that I had picked out in the store. It looked exactly like it, but but there was like a $20,000 price difference. So right now I'm like, what the fuck? I'm not mad about the money part. I'm more mad that my husband lied to me. I was more upset about the fact that he had lied to me. So I had made dinner reservations for the next night so that way I could hopefully bring up the conversation about it, like for part 3. Part 3 of how my husband accidentally told me that he was cheating on me. So like I said, I had made reservations for him and I to go out to dinner so that way I could hopefully spark up the conversation about it. So when we finally sat down, I had started up the conversation. I had told him that when I took my ring in to get it fixed, I also got it appraised. And his face immediately changed after that, but he wasn't saying anything. He was like, oh, okay, how did that go? So at this point, I was tired of beating around the bush, and I was like, why wouldn't you just tell me if we were having money troubles? And he was like, what do you mean? We're not having any money troubles. I'm fine. One thing about my husband is that he is very wealthy. And he takes pride in the fact that he is very wealthy. So obviously, me right there kind of questioning his wealth, he fucked up and told me the truth. He was like, well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I accidentally gave the ring that I was supposed to give you to a girl I was seeing at the time. And I just never got around to replacing yours. So fast forward to present day, I am currently moving all of my stuff out of our house and filing for divorce.
I'm gonna tell you guys why I don't keep food in my room anymore. At least why I don't keep this particular food in my room anymore. So when I was a kid, my dad used to leave the country a lot. Every time he would come back, he'd always bring us some sort of goodie. It'd always be like bracelets, t-shirts, and candy. One time after a trip to, I think it was Dominican Republic, brought us back a bunch of lollipops. These are not normal lollipops like you're thinking in your head. These are these giant brown flat lollipops. Now, instead of eating them, me and my sister decided it would be best to hoard them. Yes, that's right, keep them in our room for as long as possible. For what purpose? I don't know. I think it was probably like, no, we can't eat them now. If something happens and we need them. Bruh. It's not every day that we got candy, apparently. So we kept them in our room. We kind of put them on display, up against the wall, right in between both of our beds, in this very room. This time, I was about 6? My sister's about a year and a half older than me, so she was like 7, I guess. Now, these lollipops were given to both of us. They were displayed equally distanced between both of our beds, because they belonged to us both. I'm not really sure how this happened. But one night, me and my sister went to bed, but then my sister started tossing and turning. Calls out for my mom. My mom comes and she's like, what's wrong? Oh God, this is part 2 of why I don't keep food in my room anymore. So my mom came into our room. She asked my sister, hey, what's wrong? She was like, oh, my body, I'm itchy. My mom's like, oh, maybe there's a mosquito. My sister's like, no, it's all over. She moves my sister out of the bed. Maybe it's your bed. She looks at her blanket. Oh my gosh, there's ants here. She shakes the blanket. Ants crawl everywhere. Under her pillow, ants. She lifts the mattress. Guys, her bed was infested with ants. Why? There was the faintest trail leading to our lollipops. My mom's like, hey, you get out of the bed. So I got out of bed, they checked my bed, it was completely clean. There was one measly ant, literally one, one. My bed had no issues. Sister could not sleep there. So they ended up throwing our lollipops away and we were devastated. And my sister got a lot of unnecessary ant bites and I didn't get any. It's okay, because every time we go outside, I get swarmed with mosquitoes and she doesn't get bit at all.
Story time about my psychotic best friend. So we're gonna call this girl Gia. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 9th grade. I saw Gia sitting at this lunch table alone and I invited her to come sit with my friends and I. And after talking to her, I found out that she was a new student and she didn't have any friends. So her and I started hanging out and we became really close. Like she would come over my house 24/7. Well, my older sister was a grade above us and she would act really weird around her. And by weird, I mean like she would always make fun of me in front of my sister. And weirdly enough, try to cause problems between us. My sister didn't really like her. She thought that she was weird, but because she was my friend, she was being super nice to her. Well, like a month later, she started trying to become best friends with my sister. Like any conversation she would have, I would be like, oh, do you want to come over? She would be like, no, sorry, I'm hanging out with your sister today. And I would go home and I would be like, hey, are you hanging out with Gia today? And my sister would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psychotic best friend. So like I said, my sister was like, no, what are you talking about? So at this point, I'm thinking, oh, this girl's really weird. But it gets even worse. She comes over my house one day to hang out with me and goes in my sister's room the whole time. My sister dyed her hair black, so what does she do? She dyes her hair black too. The obsession was like really fucking weird. Anyway, so the one night that Gia's over, yes, I still had her over after this because I didn't think it was really weird at the time. My sister had her boyfriend over and they were in the living room watching a movie, and the whole time Gia is begging me to go in the living room and watch the movie with them. So I'm like, fine, whatever, we'll do that. We go into the living room, we all sit on the couch, and my couch is kind of small, so like we all had to squish. So she sits her ass right next to my sister's boyfriend. Well, my sister's boyfriend got up and started freaking the fuck out. Well, turns out that Gia was trying to touch him under the blanket. So I told her to leave. Next day, I got a whole paragraph of her saying that she just wanted to be like my sister because she never had an older sister.
Storytime about how I became an actress and all the harassment that I had to deal with. I signed with my first modeling agency when I was only 8 years old. My mom and older sister really supported me in this because they knew that I wanted to model and act. I signed with Miami Models during that time and began to do small commercials. I was only able to do it during the summertime because we would go to Miami during the summer, but I grew up in Nicaragua. I got my first real commercial when I was in Nicaragua and I was 11 years old. After the commercial aired, I started getting bullied in school. They thought I was weird and that I was really into myself for trying to become an actress. When I was 14, I joined acting classes for the first time. This was amazing for me. It was the first time I could express myself freely without being judged. At 16 years old, I moved to Miami with my family and I really started pursuing auditioning then. I even got myself an agent in Miami at that time. I was super driven. I was self-submitting to auditions and my agent got me a McDonald's commercial. At the age of 19, I decided to move to LA. 2 weeks into being in LA, I was harassed by a big-time director. 2 weeks after moving to LA, I was harassed by a director. A few weeks after getting to LA, I booked my first commercial. He was directing the commercial and asked me for my number because he thought I would be good for a movie he was writing. I met him at a Starbucks and he started inviting me to premieres. Of course, I kept saying no. The third time I said no, he started berating me on the phone and told me that I would never make it in Hollywood. He called me several names on the phone and wouldn't stop calling me. 2 months after arriving to LA, I finally got my first agent. I auditioned for Pretty Little Liars. I don't know if you guys know that show. I actually got a call back for that audition and was one step closer to getting the role. I lost out to Shay Mitchell. I was crushed. Then I started booking lots of commercials. I ended up having to get 2 jobs to support myself. This is when I met CJ from NSYNC. You guys already know the story time. Around this time is when my coworker pulled out a knife on me. You guys already know that story time as well. And I went to an acting conservatory for 3 years. I moved back to LA and was sexually harassed. After moving back to LA, I was sexually harassed by a well-known showrunner. That story time is already up, so you guys know it. I started booking lots of commercials during this time. It was 2016. I got a Wells Fargo commercial, Best Buy, Google, Adore Me, and I forgot to mention in 2015, I did the movie with Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel where I played Harvey Keitel's girlfriend. Unfortunately, my biggest scene was cut out of the film. If you guys want a story time on that, let me know. Unfortunately, a lot of other bad things happened in 2016. I had a stalker for a short while. I also did the Ariana Grande video that year. I met someone on set who begged me for my number and I actually deleted that story time because I was getting a lot of hate about it. After all that happened in 2016, I moved back to Miami. But then of course I decided I had to go back to LA one more time. Luckily I did book a few things, but nothing substantial enough to keep me there. Now I have one agent in New York, LA, Utah, and Vegas. So many of you guys tell me you want to be actors like I am. The reality is that it's extremely hard to get acting work. You either have to know someone or be very lucky, or be at the right place at the right time. Love you guys.
I was engaged to the love of my life, but my sister met up with me and begged me to break it off. She said I had to leave him because they were in love, and he was just too afraid to break up with me because he didn't want to hurt me or my family. When I confronted my fiance about my stepsister's accusations, he straight up denied him. He said she's been trying to come on to him for some time and he never mentioned it because he didn't want to ruin our relationship. He begged me not to believe her and so we continue how we were. My stepsister grew resentful and made nasty comments about how I was forcing a man who didn't even love me to marry me because I had low self-esteem. A month later, I get a text from my sister. It's a video of her and my fiance sleeping together in my bed and multiple screenshots of him telling her he loved her, how he wished she was the girl he was marrying, and how he hated that I wouldn't let them be together. I was devastated and angry but decided to move in silence. I went home, grabbed all my stuff, removed all my money from my joint account, and moved in with my dad. After that, I sent all the screenshots to my family and his. He tried getting back with me multiple times, but I ended up blocking him when I found out he proposed to my sister with the same ring he gave me. I left it behind. Now they're getting married. I was extremely hurt to find out that my mom, step-siblings, and stepdad were attending the wedding. When I tried to express my feelings, they dismissed me and said it wasn't their fault that I got in the way of true love and made me out to be some sort of vindictive Disney villain. So I cut contact with them and I barely spoke to my mom in 5 years. Fast forward and I get engaged to my now husband.
Storytime on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend, and she was the one to walk in on them. Okay, so boom, my parents were happily married and been together for 20 years. My mom and my dad were both 48 years old and I was 16. Now my boyfriend, who my parents loved and treated like their own, was also 16. My boyfriend was a little feminine, but nothing crazy. There was a couple rumors in school of him being gay, but there was never any proof and he always denied it. A weird dynamic in me and my boyfriend's relationship is that he never really wanted to get freaky with me. I had to practically beg him him to make out with me. And at times when we were doing the nasty, sometimes his hot dog would, I became kind of insecure, but he just told me that he was one of those guys that weren't affectionate. And the way he would console me and embrace me, I believed him and thought it was normal. Other than that, our relationship was pretty peaceful. Well, him and my dad's relationship was always weird. And you, me, and my mom, we're about to find out why. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend, and she was the one to walk in on them. Okay, so boom, like I said, my dad and my boyfriend's relationship was always weird. My boyfriend would come over my house like every day and spend time with me and my dad. Not so much my mom because my mom worked the night shift. He would usually get to know my mom on her off days, which was Saturday and Sundays. So over the year that my boyfriend's been coming over, my boyfriend would always end up in my dad's room. My boyfriend would tell me that he's gonna go over to my dad's room and play Xbox with him. I tried going in the room sometimes just to watch them play, but they both convinced me that it was a guy's thing and that it was a bonding moment, like a father and son type of thing. So I would always just do my own thing in my room and wait for my boyfriend to come back. Well, one Monday night when my mom is supposed to be working, she actually wasn't feeling good, so she came back home. I myself didn't even know my mom came back. So I know for a fact that my dad and my brother didn't hear either. All of a sudden I heard my mom open their room door and scream, "Oh my God!" And I immediately ran out my room like for part 3. Part 3 on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend, and she was the one who walked in on them. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom opened the door and screamed, "Oh my God!" I immediately ran out my room and went to my mom and stood right next to her. Me and my mom stood there in shock while we looked at my dad's hot dog in my boyfriend's peach. All 4 of us was literally frozen in place. My mom's reaction is actually something you wouldn't expect. She didn't fight or anything. She just closed the door, told me to go to my room, called the cops on my dad, because obviously my boyfriend is a minor. Police came, took my dad, brought him to jail, and my mom divorced him. No kicking, no fighting, no none of that. Not even any screaming. I'm not gonna lie, I told everyone in my school. It got so bad for my boyfriend, he had to actually change schools. And his parents are currently taking my dad to court. Now, me and my mom literally both don't speak to my dad. And yeah, me and my mom bonded, because we were both literally cheated on with each other's significant others. So if your boyfriend says he's gonna play games with your dad, ask him what type of games. Storytime on how I slept with a ghost that haunted my house. And no, I'm not crazy. Okay, so boom, I live in a haunted house with my parents and my little brother. I'm 16 and we've been dealing with this haunting for the past 8 years. My parents tried to move houses, but they followed us and continued to haunt my family. I would wake up to doors being wide open, things around the house being moved, and my mom even said one of these ghosts pushed her while she was opening the fridge. My little brother is so scared he sleeps with my parents every night. Let's just say lots of crazy weird things was happening. Well, one night, one of these ghosts got in my bed. I woke up and felt a presence right next to me. That presence was all up in my grill. Then it disappeared. This started happening every night, and I kind of started expecting it. Well, one night something changed, and the ghost had different plans. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I slept with a ghost that haunted my house. Okay, so boom, like I said, this night the ghost had different plans for me. I felt my sheets slightly slip down and pressure on my body. The pressure made my body feel so heavy, and then I started feeling some things. And by the time those things was over, I just realized I did the nasty with a ghost. You gotta work with me. TikTok won't let me explain those things. Anyways, I told my parents and they were not having it. They paid big money to fly someone in and have them blessed and clear the home from any hauntings. We tried this before, but it didn't work. My parents just finally went with the big guns and hired the expensive guy, because at this point things were going too far. So far it looks like it worked because none of us felt any hauntings or presence from then. But since I'm now disturbed and violated by a ghost, I'm in therapy, and some people just call me crazy. But trust me, I know what went down. I felt it.
Story time. My boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. It was my junior year in high school, and my boyfriend and I had been dating for 4 months. Well, the one night his friend, and I were all supposed to go to this party. My boyfriend ended up getting called into work that night, so his friend and I went. Which my boyfriend was fine with because he wanted his best friend to keep an eye on me, but he also trusted us. Anyway, so his friend and I ended up going to the party, and that but the next morning I woke up, I didn't remember that at all. So fast forward, I find out that I'm pregnant. Well, me forgetting that I totally cheated on my boyfriend, I thought that it was his. Well, a week later, I get a text from his friend. And he's like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what are we gonna do?" So then he filled me in on the whole situation that I didn't remember. But I was like, there's really no chance of this because my boyfriend and I fucked like a million times and me and you fucked once. The real tea is that my boyfriend was black and his friend was white. Well, me being the bitch that I am, I was like, well, let's just wait it out. I bet it's not his, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend found out that his best friend got me pregnant. So like I said, my boyfriend was black, his best friend was white, and because I doubted that it was his best friend's kid, I decided to wait it out. Say it with me, bad idea. So fast forward, I'm in the delivery room and I decide not to have my boyfriend in there. Well, let's just say good thing that he did. Bitch, whenever this thing popped out, it was white as fucking paper. So I was like to the doctor, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna have a panic attack. Please get the baby out of the room. I don't want anybody around the baby right now. So when my boyfriend came back in the room, I was like, oh, we can't see the baby. He's having some issues. He's over here freaking out. I'm having a fucking panic attack about what I'm gonna do. And they brought my kid back and I was like, that's not my kid. And this girl looked so confused. She was like, oh, okay. And my boyfriend and I are laughing. We're like, oh, haha, that's funny. Then she comes back into the room and she's like, ma'am, this is your kid. So my boyfriend started screaming and he broke up with me after that. Like, how rude to just leave me with a kid by myself. No, I'm just joking. I know that was pretty fucked. Storytime, my dad got my half-brother's girlfriend pregnant. A little background information. This all happened a few years ago. Anyways, my brother was fresh out of high school and he had been dating this girl named Serena for 2 years. And my dad, for some reason, hated her. At least that's what we thought. Well, my brother didn't have a license at the time, so every time that she came over, she needed somebody to drop her off at home. So my dad would always offer to drop her off at home, even though he literally hated her. And he could have just ordered her an Uber, which is what he did with all of my friends. Well, the one night her parents called and they were like, hey, like, is Serena still there? She hasn't came home yet. And my dad said that he was dropping her off. So I called my dad and he said that they ran out of